Mercury stationing retrograde in the sign of Cancer on Monday, June 29th, is the beginning of a long, powerful healing journey for Mercury, Hermes, which begins its reflective process in Cancer, conjunct a bit widely with Jupiter moving into Leo on that same day. This provides us with a tremendous amount of courage, wisdom, and healing to find love again, or maybe for the first time, within. Probably no, not with the former lovers that may likely return, as often happens during Mercury retrograde, although it can be a possibility, but more within the self-mothering and nurturance that's available within us. Mercury, that rarely spends as much time in one sign, will be in Cancer all the way until August 9th, having gone direct on July 23rd and in shadow again until the 6th of August. So basically, we have until the 9th of August to really feel Mercury retrograde's influence in that moon-ruled mother and nurturing focused sign of Cancer. And this will be felt especially potently for Gemini and Gemini rising, Virgo and Virgo rising, and anyone in a Mercury ruled perfection year. But regardless, wherever any of us have Cancer in our own natal chart, that will be a place of focus, of energy, reflection, review, and a recognition of the patterns that have come out of the conditioning related to that house in your chart, usually maternal themes. So what does that all mean? Let's talk about it. Hi, I'm Amy Rose White. I'm an integrative psychotherapist and astrologer making videos with concrete healing tools that are aligned with the current astrological movements. Please feel free to download any of my free healing tools and resources that are linked below, and you can see there where my remaining spots for July are. So we can expect a kind of a revolution in our self-love in the form of nurturance, self-understanding, and compassion to really be amplified by that presence of the initial conjunction with Jupiter moving into Leo. And until the 9th of July, Venus is also there. So we've got those two benefics in the sign of courage, creativity, passion, and expression, and pleasure. So we're supported to best use this time of introspection and review. That's what retrogrades are for the mental identification of the way Mercury, the way in which we emotionally, Cancer, protect ourselves, and how those came from our relationships to our parents and caregivers. Was vulnerability modeled? Were we punished for making mistakes? Was it difficult to communicate emotions? Were we teased for that? Was sharing authentic expressions dangerous? Those are the questions at hand. And of course, because the answer for too many of us to those questions is yes, Mercury retrograde in Cancer brings an understanding of the specific strategies that we personally developed to avoid feeling unsafe. And in adulthood, really taking a hard look at those. Where are those serving us? Are they helping us? Or are they harming us and others in our relationships now as grown-ups? So this will likely bring profound wisdom and insight around this review, as well as, yes, some emotional experiences. But that is worth it because it comes with expanded insight. That's the goal of retrogrades, into these emotional patterns. Because of that conjunction with Jupiter at the same time as the station, Jupiter wants to turn these times into teaching moments, learning moments, in this case months, where our wisdom and our ability to receive spiritual grace, that's Jupiter, actually expands at the time of the retrograde. Pluto is also within range of that trine to Uranus, as well as a sextile to Neptune, and Neptune is in sextile to Uranus. So once again, we're talking about that movement getting closer to that Barbell basket everyone's talking about, coming into exactitude, and the handle of that basket between Jupiter and Pluto won't come, for a few more weeks. That will develop later. But in the meantime, we have this minor grand trine just getting closer and closer to perfection by degree, and we absolutely feel it now. We don't have to wait once we're in that 3 degree, or which we've been in for quite some time. We're with it by exact degree or within one, with Neptune and Pluto already exact. This indicates to me that this particular Mercury retrograde is much more profound than an average Mercury retrograde in Cancer, which would already normally bring up a lot of emotions. But here we have this truly never before seen. I know astrologers are constantly telling you this. In this case, this year, 2026, it was really true. It's true that configuration with Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus, most of the outer planets, mostly working harmoniously until we get to that opposition with Pluto and Jupiter. But I still like oppositions because they're relational. That happening in a few weeks, which has never happened in known history, really signifies inner revolution and insight, because Uranus and Pluto are in air signs, configured to Neptune in fire, at the same time that we have this long, protracted time of a mental, emotional, spiritual review in water, Cancer. So obviously what's missing from there is Earth. At the time of this retrograde, the only Earth is really the South Node in Virgo, which is a declining energy. And then, of course, we have Chiron newly into Taurus. So it's a lot of fire and air, which work well together. And the Cancer energy is saying, let's not get too cerebral. Let's not get lost in the weeds mentally or with our impulses, fire. But let's actually feel into the truth of what is emerging. And we're very well supported to experience that at this time in a profoundly healing way, because that's what water does. Water wants to soothe. It's like a balm. It wants to heal. It wants us to go deep. This is a deep Mercury retrograde. And Jupiter, in that initial conjunction, wants to heal and help us grow. Cancer ultimately wants us to feel nourished from within, to feel safe, and to deprogram what mental strategies and those emotional strategies from the past. Cancer is very much about the past and where we've been unconscious of those patterns that don't serve us. It definitely wants to shake up all those patterns of self-undoing that are mental, including negative karmic loops. That's where sometimes we just feel trapped in patterns. Uranus wants to shake all that up so that we can actually feel more deeply the truth of our right now moment, so that we don't get stuck in acting out of the past. And because the moon is associated with memory, because it's a reflective light, it reflects the light of the sun, it's not its own original light, we have an opportunity with that Pluto, Neptune, Uranus trines and sextiles to actually be liberated from the memories that might actually be repetitive for those of us that have PTSD or CPTSD, but also very emotional memories that might even be related to precognitive experiences where we didn't actually know what our body was experiencing, places where we tighten, where we collapse, where we act out of reactivity and explode in certain circumstances. These are lunar memories that will come up at this time for liberation, for excavation, and dissolution, Neptune. But it is up to us to turn towards them and not away from them, which is really tempting with Jupiter expanding the watery experience of Cancer. It can feel overwhelming and we will want to distance. We'll have parts that will want to get a lot of distance. So there can be many interpsychic parts that don't want us to go there and don't allow it for fear of the water consuming us. It's not an accident that the ocean, water in general, has often been associated archetypally with the mother, because we come from water. We come from the watery depths of the womb, where we're literally consumed and held and one with our mothers, hopefully in an ideally in a positive way as we're growing. But maybe that wasn't the case. Maybe there was lack of safety when we were in that water. Maybe there was a uncertainty or even an unwantedness of us when we were one with our mother. And later in life, regardless of whether that's the case, water can be symbolic for intrusive maternal energy and overwhelming emotion, including, for just one example, a dysfunctional maternal need to have emotions managed and cared for by the children, by their offspring. And that is a really common Jupiter, Mercury, Cancer experience, where the mental space and the emotional space feels boundaryless with women, or where we feel like we don't have enough of a container from maternal energies. So that might mean noticing the places in which your own living mother or women in your life maybe can never get enough, or perhaps just feels too much in your field. And it might be like a woman in your life or a mom that follows you around or calls a little too frequently, or can really only focus on themselves and not see you. There's a problem with the boundary there. You share something with them, and that boundary diffusion, they turn it into them, or maybe they make you into their therapist or their teacher or guide rather than being the parent for you. And these maternal themes might have little to do with an actual living mother if your mother is alive, or if you have a mom, or maybe you don't, maybe you're raised by someone else. and much more about the way in which we mother ourselves and others. And do we do that consciously or unconsciously? Are we boundaried in that care? Do we overgive? Do we let people in? Do we have a shell? Because we need both. We need the shell of the crab, the external boundary, and the emotional and psychic boundaries, and the soft underbelly, the vulnerable places. We need to know when to have those hard, firm boundaries and which people, places, and things, that's Pluto and Aquarius, we need to keep out and who to let in. What groups are safe? With whom do we want to be influenced? By whom do we want to be influenced? And what groups are we willing to be part of, or do we need to really be careful around? Where do we need to be liberated? Uranus and Neptune and Aries from our own decisions around the way we're taking care of ourselves. Or are we actually self-sabotaging? Are we using drugs, alcohol, other substances or processes that can also represent the sextile with Neptune and Pluto, such as scrolling or shopping or sex or whatever, to disassociate from the emotional body? Cancer. This is a time to ask yourselves, do we habitually defensively react? Or do we stonewall and shut down? It can definitely be a Jupiter in Cancer archetype as well, where we overgive, we overmother, we do too much, we share too much. Mercury might just, verbal diarrhea. And so there's a reflection on discernment in relationship, particularly with family and in our homes. I am personally extremely particular about who I literally let into my home. I guess literally and figuratively. My home is my crab shell. Cancer is a fourth house for me, and I have Saturn there. My crab shell is my home, my environment, my physical body. These are sacred ground for me. So if you are funky, you are not getting in. So what we let in needs to be examined here. And certainly you can use the journal reflections and the meditation suggestion that I give you today that I'm about to share, with you for the Mercury retrograde. But even if you don't take those actions, it will come up. People from the past, yes, Mercury retrograde, they will be revisiting. Family members from the past, most likely. People from your childhood and memories from the past are much more likely to come up now because this Mercury retrograde is ruled by the moon. And at the time of the retrograde, the moon, the ruler of the retrograde, is in Capricorn. And being Saturn ruled could also bring up father conditioning and themes of revisiting, maybe what needs to be said, what needs to be expressed. That might be writing letters you don't actually send or doing chair work with the paternal archetypes in our lives. Even if you weren't raised by biological parents, mother, father archetypes are big here. And that moon is in detriment in Capricorn, so it's uncomfortable there. I think that means that this lends to the initial flavor of the retrograde being a bit of resistance or even fear of crossing that threshold. Saturn, being the ruler of the moon, placed in Capricorn in detriment at the time of the initial station, it might require discipline and some structure to not feel overwhelmed by these reflections, to not feel overwhelmed by the memories, and to not feel overwhelmed by the emotions that might surface. So here's what I encourage you to do. Make a little Mercury retrograde altar for this one. I don't always suggest that necessarily for Mercury retrograde. Obviously, it's great to do if you're so inclined for any transit. But for this one in particular, I would say ask Hermes, the magician, the psychopomp, the messenger between the worlds. Find a place to honor that archetype, for that messenger energy to be visible in your home or your altar space. That could be a feather, that could be paper and pen, it could be a dream journal, it could be writing the glyph of Mercury on a piece of paper or a stone and placing it where you can see it next to a candle, and asking the information to come to you in a way that your nervous system can handle the information and the reflections and the insights that will serve you the most, and ask for what you need at this time to come in that manageable way. And then I would definitely encourage you to seek wise counsel, whether that is a friend, a mentor, a teacher, guru, spiritual advisor, therapist, coach, astrologer. If you feel inspired to do that, if you feel like you want or need extra support, if you feel like you need some guidance or some clarity, because as we know, Mercury retrograde is a time where things can feel kind of confusing and fuzzy or muddled, especially if you go to return to someone you've worked with before. This is a great time to return to a person, place, or thing that's been supportive and useful to you in the past. That might be going back to the tarot if you used to do that, or going back to the runes. I just did an egg cleanse on myself, which I haven't done in years. So turning to Jupiterian support during this time will make a lot of sense and be really effective. So your meditation and reflection for this long Mercury retrograde in Cancer through the beginning of August is, am I reacting like a crab in relationships? And if so, how and where did that come from? Your mirror work is, you are safe to feel all of your emotions fully and return fear to where it came from. And your mantra for this transit is, I create safety within and I choose safety without. I hope this was useful. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for your subscribes, for hyping the video, for sharing, for liking. I love reading your comments. I read every single one. I think it'll be a long time before I, somehow don't have time to give some kind of feedback to every comment. They're very meaningful to me. Thank you so much for your presence here. And if you like this video, you really enjoy these ones above me, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.